India's digital landscape has transformed the way we communicate, but it has also created new spaces for abuse, misogyny, and political polarization. Deepfakes, revenge, porn, trolling, and coordinated online attacks are increasingly becoming part of that reality. But what happens when these digital battles become the subject of literature? And can fiction help us understand the forces shaping India's online world? That is what we explore today. The rise of online misogyny, the impact of AI and deepfakes, and the growing challenges faced by the women in digital public sphere. Joining us to discuss all of this is Meena Kandasamy, an acclaimed Indian poet, novelist, and writer. Her latest novel, which is Fieldwork as a Sex Object, explores the intersection of technology, misogyny, politics, and power, drawing on the darker realities of India's digital world. Thank you, Meena, for making time in this special edition of On Point.
Thank you for having me today.
And let me begin this conversation by asking you what prompted you to write this book, and why did you choose the title Fieldwork as a sex object?
Um, I think the prompt came from two different, pull factors or reasons. One was the fact that every day in the news, somewhere you read young women are taking their lives because there is a threat of, a video or a selfie or intimate images being leaked. And so broadly, and this was, not a political thing. I just broadly wanted to, write a kind of story and tell young women that, it's your body, and you're not, there's nothing to be ashamed of it. And people are going to leak or do whatever and hold you to blackmail, hold you to ransom, hold you to shaming. Don't give in to that. And I think this is a big fallout of the internet, and I just really badly wanted to say something against it, but not just as a message, but more like in the form of a story or something like that. So I think this is one factor. The other is the way I have seen the online space become very toxic and very uninhabitable for women with a political opinion. So you're attacked from all sides, you're called all kinds of names, and you're doxxed. And we see this happen over the last 15 years, that Twitter might have existed, or other social media exists. And also wanted to capture that moment. Why is it so difficult to be a woman with a political opinion in the online space?
You think that women with political opinion is an issue in online space? I think I find both opinionated men and women with intolerable positions.
You think it's not a problem restricted to the online space? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I mean to say it's also not restricted to gender. I mean, so even men have, uh,
No, I think, sir, for men, you have to write a book, sir. For women, I've held my ground. But what I'm trying to say, no, I think there's a difference on why I specifically want to talk about the online space. The thing with the online space is offline, there is someone, this is the person, and you can go after them. There can be police, there can be some kind of process, there can be some kind of, and a person like who's online and again offline and against you, it's that one person. But online there's absolute anonymity. And the second thing about the online space is that they're using so many bots, so they're using all these troll farms, so it gives the impression that a multitude is against you, and therefore you feel like even more of a victim, because the attack is coming from all angles and all quarters and all of that. So yeah, I definitely think that it's that. But I also think in general, like, why, yes, as you say, everyone is subjected to abuse online. There's no question that men are having it. But I do not necessarily think that the first point of attack on a man comes from the his sexuality, or what his dating history, or the fact that if he's immoral or moral. I think these are questions that are reserved for later.
okay.
People are either
Oh,
stupid or corrupt or something.
absolutely.
So
And first, let's get down to this book, because you have written it very differently. They're connected, but they're also, the chapters are disconnected. And in some of the chapters, you have asked the person to to add their own stories, as if it's complete, but you can also further complete it by writing your 5 lines to it. So how did you get this idea? Making the person reading the book write his own lines in the novel written by you.
so thank you. So the thing is actually to work on the style and to find the tone of voice. I was I wanted something that mimics the doom scroll. And in it, when we're doom scrolling, like, we never spend too much time. So all the chapters are like literally one or maximum 2 pages. And in doom scroll, we also jump from one topic to another. There's no coherence. The coherence is something that we build in our minds. And the second thing I think about the online article that I also tried to mimic here was, using a title for every chapter, like really provocative, because we don't click anything unless it's rage bait, unless it's clickbait. The YouTube thumbnail, I'm sure your production team knows, unless it's something that's so exciting and gets people's attention. So I think that's the second thing in terms of how I organize. And the third thing is, so much of this internet also wants us to outrage, also wants us to add our points of view, wants us to take part in opinion polls, which is also one form of engagement. And like what you call engagement farming. I think this was the equivalent of engagement farming in a book.
Okay. Meena, gender has produced a lot of literature, a lot of wonderful books, a lot of studies, a lot of conversation. But gender in itself has not produced politics of its own. The only politics the gender has produced is through certain Labharti models where women, where certain sections of women were focused and the money was directly transferred. Is this something very specific to South Asia? Do you think that the gender politics also need to evolve in this country? The way gender as a position operates in Europe and America? What are your views on that?
So I think understanding gender in Europe and America is largely has been their reaction to the church. In terms of what are the biggest struggles, let's say it's the anti-abortion struggle and stuff like that. But I believe that people often leave women out of political conversations, so we assume that women do not exist in the framework of political and decision making and policy frameworks or whatever, even the broader left and liberal dissent. So you go back to the Russian Revolution in 1917, it's basically women who start striking in the factories, who the women who are basically saying that we are not getting wages. You come back to Tamil Nadu, you look at the history of, the communist movement in the 1950s, 1960s. Women are demanding the right. I want to go and breastfeed my child when I'm still working in the field. So I believe that, every single political act has been, like even for instance, the civil rights movement, a woman wants to sit on a bus, it's Rosa Parks, and then women started. So I do not necessarily want to take women out of the broader political conversation. So many changes that all of us enjoy are the result of women fighting for rights, fighting for their rights, fighting for everyone's rights. And I think that, in terms of even South Asian historiography, as you call it, like, are we reducing everything to, let's say, a couple of organizations and a couple of NGOs, which is one way of looking at it? Or are we looking at, let's say, who protected the PF of everybody in this country? It's the garment and textile workers in Bangalore who blocked the highways, who managed to get the entire country into a sense of outrage about what is happening. And I think the same thing in terms of, so many rights that we have, or workplace protections that we have. I think women are constantly negotiating and fighting for the broader issue, So I don't think women should be left out of the conversation, or the issue of, gender alone. Have we had a gendered politics? Because even Tamil Nadu's politics, and which you'll be very well aware of, so much of it surrounded the issues of women, and like women's right to divorce, the women's right against sati, the women's right to remarriage, the right of widows to remarriage. And I think we cannot leave women out of conversations. They have been so critical to taking all of our politics forward, is what I think.
No, absolutely. Coming to this, larger political space, and then I'll go to your chapter, which is myopic hypocrisy of liberalism. If you look at the statement which Udaynidhi gave, this Meloni statement which, happened between Rahul Gandhi and Rahul Gandhi in the Ratnatmak Congress conversation they were having with Sandeep Dikshit. The framing of a powerful woman. Do you think that, Indian men find it very difficult to frame them as individuals, powerful women?
I think that it's quite interesting in terms of what happened with the the specific example of Rahul Gandhi, because I think of him as someone who constantly watches his words, is very pro women's participation. And this is something I say as someone who has met him and interacted with him. I generally also think that we also have to hold into account that who was, the kind of things that is said about his mother, and the fact, the things around her widowhood, and how they call her a Jersey cow. All of these are not things we can ever forget. And Rahul, I think I would always see him as a victim of the kind of broader misogyny than as someone who perpetrates it. And coming back to, I think, obviously, to the kind of comments that have happened in Tamil Nadu as well. Uh, I think the thing is, it has hit escape velocity because Trisha is a very popular actress.
Yeah.
And it manages in that sense for us to make news. But I think for a long time, and these were people who are like absolutely, have nothing against Dravidian philosophy, who have been subjected in the online space to a lot of abuse by the DMK. And I've been one of those few people who has called out both the right wing and the DMK for the kind of abuse that has come my way. And I genuinely believe that we need a cleanup of the system. We have to find a way to disagree without dragging women into it. And it's possible. It's definitely possible to have that kind of absolutely civilized discourse without, shaming women or making them the center of what is going on.
But if you, I completely agree with you. Cutting across parties, it has happened. Cutting across leaders, it has happened. I mean, say powerful men leaders, they have made fun of women. Cutting across political parties.
Yeah, and it's not even. I wouldn't even necessarily say it's restricted only to men. Like, it has been. I think one of the most vivid examples I remember from my childhood is Sushma Swaraj saying she would shave her head, if Sonia won or something. And I felt that with so much, coded Hindu coded misogyny, because only widows, are subjected, at least in parts of India, to shaving their heads. So I think that this kind of thing, the way that shaming women has
But
become part of.
Meena, sorry for interrupting. Men also do that.
Yes, men do that. Oh, yeah, yeah, shaving the heads. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Men
absolutely.
also
No,
do
but
that.
what I mean is no, yeah. So what I mean is that it's this idea that, we are encoding so much and shaming women. I think it's a big problem. We need this discourse, because what is the end point of it? The question is also not that, sometimes people say grow a thick skin, you can't be affected about it. But then you also have to understand that we are perpetuating that culture of, making it normalized and making it like the status quo. It's like, oh, if you are in politics, you have to be strong enough to take all the shit that comes your way. So yeah.
Meena, when I was reading this book, going through it, do you feel that Indian liberal project is failing also because of its own weakness, lack of resilience, not because uh, the political forces that challenge it are strong, but the liberal project in itself has become weak, that it does not trust itself. Like people who believe that constitutional patriotism should be pushed will not talk about it.
No, I didn't get the last part of the question. Can
So
you
I'm
please
saying
repeat that?
that, do you think that there is a crisis of Indian liberalism because it does not feel strong from within? Because a lot of liberal people would say, right wing forces are very strong. But is the crisis more internal?
No, I think what has happened is that liberals speak, often imports, at least in India, imports American terminology without having kind of self-questioning or
How?
introspection or anything.
How?
So,
How? Can you elucidate that with an example?
huh?
Can you elucidate that with an example?
As an example, yeah, yeah, I think, see, one of the things that we conveniently adopted this entire discourse against what is triggering and what is trauma response, and or the way, or the way, I think these are multiple examples in which we also tell people. For instance, one of the things about the US is who gets to talk about which struggle and who tells somebody to stay in your lane. But I do not think that we are at that kind of, a very different type of way in which democracy functions. As well as here, we cannot normally tell people to stay in their lane or not talk about things, because in India many issues are very pressing. They have to be talked about by people irrespective of their class or caste character. And this is so important because unless we have a broader consensus, we're talking about a country with so many differences. So the more people are speaking, the more people are on the streets, the more it helps you. But here you're like, no, 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 you cannot talk, you're too rich, you're too Brahmin, you're too this. So we have perfected the art of not getting solidarity from the quarters from which we can get solidarity. So we have become like so fragmented and almost eating ourselves up. And I think that's a big problem of the broader liberal discourse. And I think it's not an Indian thing. It's absolutely copy pasted from whatever is going on in Western academia. And that's a huge problem because you go and look back at communist movements, you look back at even the Periyar, like Periyar himself did not come from a working class background. He came from an upper caste. He was a Naidu by birth, but he was taking up issues of caste, untouchability, women. And if Periyar was staying in his lane, we would not have the consequences of if. And the same thing with communism in the 50s, like who were the early communist leaders? So everybody stayed stayed in their own lane. Like, or Ambedkar, for instance, on women, like if Ambedkar decided that we are not going to look at women's issues, there would have been no Hindu code bill, there have been none of the rights that we enjoy today as a consequence. So yeah, I am so fed up. I'm sorry to laugh, it's a nervous laugh, so fed up of this stay in your lane politics that we have adopted, I think. Yeah.
Okay, Meena, break this down for us. Let's come to democracy and dissent. Let's merge those two themes with your book. Did you find it surprising? I went to Jantar Mantar. I don't know whether you visited the protest sites or not. The language was Ambedkarite, but the form was Gandhinian. And Gandhi is the most pillaged politician of all time. You make fun of him, you get away, there is no case. The language they deployed was of Ambedkar, but the form they took was of the Gandhi, and that was a unique intersection which I witnessed in Delhi. Did you witness?
I went to the Chennai protests.
Okay.
I went for 2 3 days, and I think I was there. In fact, just a half an hour. I was there until when the Pradhan resigned. So it was lovely to see all of that in FaceTime. Like in real time. The first thing I felt about the protest was that young people were being absolutely irreverent. So that irreverence was, I think, yes, you could call it Gandhian in the sense that Gandhi would have loved provocation, and he's possibly a very provocative person himself. So what I felt when I was, and Gandhi is also someone who, if he existed today, would have used social media to the maximum. He would have known how to play for that audience. Like everything
Really?
about yes, no, but everything about him, you look at it, is known to hit the emotional chord. Like it can become viral. Like you can take a small thing about a handloom and make it something that goes into everybody's life. He doesn't eat, but it becomes everyone's problem. So he would have known how to be an internet diva. I have no doubt about it. Like I have my differences with him, but he would have played the social media well. But one of the things about this irreverence was, the same galis that are given on the internet became like words to own. But I felt that my biggest thing was, how do we translate these placards to our parents? Because like definitely felt that the some of it was absolutely untranslatable, but it was also like, yeah, it was possibly the result of, I don't know, COVID having all of us in lockdown and making meme the generational connect, or like the default language of speech. So it was a lot of meme material on the internet, I felt, which was in the
How do you decode this entire Gen Z thing? Because the online ecosystem has produced a lot of false moral outrage. It has also produced bigotry. It has also produced a very rancid conversation around untouchability in caste. Distorting historical facts, and it was also able to produce something very beautiful like Gen Z movement.
How do the two? So you're asking how the two coexist? It's quite interesting. I think in terms of how communication happens, and I think that they have managed to take a space that was not Twitter for their organizing. It was largely on Instagram and other things. So where the success of the right wing, or let's say the organized political force was there, that was not the field of their organization. They had definitely moved away from it, and we find it in all of the Gen Z protests as well. So if you looked at the Tunisian revolution of, let's say, 2000, the Arab Spring, it was largely Facebook and Twitter coded. But you look at Nepal was using Discord to select who was going to be the next prime minister. there was so they're using they just turn into alternative forms of social media that are not the primary ones. Please go ahead. Yeah.
No, 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 please complete, because I was just trying to, I was just trying to connect this with the larger civilizational conversation that is happening. The controversy which broke out, in which Mallikarjun Kharge went. People said he made fun of Sanatan Dharma. So, we held, they held a Havan. So, my question is around untouchability, the discussion of caste. Do you think in modern India, caste and untouchability, the way there should have been an academic conversation about it, is not having, it's being subsumed by a different conversation? It has been de-hierarchized, it has become a lesser project, subsumed by the larger nationalist project.
Um, so I want to explain something here that it has should a caste have been a bigger conversation? Yes. Does the conversation about caste always get reduced to the reservation question?
Yes.
Sadly, yes. And does the reservation question also, is it ever addressed without a very subjective position of, I didn't get a seat or my cousin didn't get a seat? Are we talking about how many of these seats are left unfilled, or, and what exactly happens on
Yes.
campuses? And do we realize that only for 50 years we've had, like, no, for 50 years we've had something that looks like reservation, because all of this was brought in later. And until 2007, we didn't even have like mandated reservation in education. I think all of these talking points are left out. But what I wanted to really say, and to go back to this comment on Sanatan Dharma, is that in the south, and please do not mistake me, in Tamil Nadu especially, the idea of the Sanatani is the orthodoxy. So the Sanatani means the orthodoxy, and the orthodoxies are the people who, let us say, when we were the British colonial rule, and somebody was saying we should not burn women, the Sanatanis were saying, no, that's part of our religion. Like, this is sati system is part of the religion. So in the South, the understanding of the Sanatani exists as the person who takes the most extreme orthodox position. So when we say about Sanatan Dharma in the South, we are specifically talking about a certain type of orthodoxy that believes there is an eternal order, that believes sati system should have existed, that believes widows should not remarry, that believes that in the eternal order of things, people should not get educated, because this Sanatan, the way it has been understood, at least in the South, and especially, in the works of like Periyar, or many of the leaders that have, come, Ayodhidasa Pandita, Rettamali Srinivas, the entire spectrum, our understanding of Sanatana comes from the idea that, let's say, when Ram is ruling, and a Brahmin comes and says, my young child died, and then the Rama as a king finds out what is wrong with my rule, and they find that there's a disturbance to the eternal order of things. And what is the disturbance is that the Shudra called Shambhuka is doing penance, and he's not supposed to do penance. So unless Shambhuka is killed, the eternal order doesn't exist. So that eternal order, which is that Shudras cannot learn, is seen in the South as Sanatan Dharma. So in the South, the understanding of Sanatan Dharma is not going to the temple, because everyone goes to the temple. I go to the temple. So, so I can be very rationalist and all, but yeah, I definitely go to temples, and I have nothing against that. And I'm like, does that make me Sanatani? No. So,
Isn't
so
that
the
a,
thing is,
okay, Meena,
there is
that's
a
a very,
miscommunication in language.
okay,
It
let
is,
me
it's
let me
happening here.
okay, let me put my question differently. It's like, it's one, is South one composite identity? I mean to say, like, people from South can say you are a North Indian, but is North one composite identity? I don't think South is one composite identity. South is very diverse, extremely diverse. And secondly, isn't it like falling into a stereotype? Like, when you go to South, there's something called Punjabi tiffin, but I know that it's not Punjabi tiffin. That food is not a Punjabi food. Or in North India, it's like saying, are you going to a Madrasi cafe?
Hey,
There's
no,
nothing
no, no.
called a,
I understand. I understand where you're coming from, but what I want to say is that the political discourse around Sanatan Dharma has always been a discourse that is anti-caste. So when you say Sanatan Dharma, the Tamil progressive, or the Tamil radical, or the Tamil Dalit leader, or the Tamil Periyarist will only hear caste. And I'm not saying
so my
maybe
question
it's a
is it
flattening.
specific to
Maybe it
Tamil
is a
Nadu?
flattening. It could be a flattening. It is very specific to both the Dravidian and the Dalit movement here. That Sanatan Dharma for us and this is not just a new definition, because the idea of the Sanatani, even during the British time, was the ultra-orthodox.
So
So
is
we
it
talk about an ultra-orthodoxy of preserving caste.
is it specific to Tamil Nadu, or are you saying that it's also
To
specific to
Dravidian, yes,
Kerala?
to the Dravidian movements, to the Dravidian movements, to the Dalit politics, because, for instance, there was a anti-Sanatan conference and other things that and the reason they stopped using it, and there was a specific reason. For instance, I would realize why, let's say, a Liberation Panthers or the Vidudalai Chiruthaigal, which is a left-leaning Dalit party in Tamil Nadu with two MPs and two MLAs. Now they're part of the TVK government. They stopped using Sanatan Dharma because they felt, let us say, that only using Brahmanism was not solving the problem, because Brahmanism doesn't address the entire caste system. How do you call out the caste system without, it just looks at people at the top of the pyramid, whereas you go and see who are the people burning Dalit homes, who are doing anti-Dalit atrocities. It is the backward and the dominant and the Shudra caste. So Sanatan was a way of saying that we're talking about the system of caste. And in a way in which we don't only talk about Brahmanism. So it was like a broad-based way to not talk about, just specifically point about Brahmanism, because Brahmanism as a word is okay, but it deflects a lot of hatred only against one specific caste. Whereas the problem is the entire caste order. The fact that there is a caste order existing there. And I think this idea, this Sanatan, I think it's really lost in translation, because when Tamil people say that they're anti-Sanatan Dharma, they're not saying, break the temple. They're not saying don't go to the temples. And this miscommunication
Okay.
is why I think when you Sorry, yeah,
No,
go
no, no,
ahead.
no, no,
Sorry.
absolutely. You are in the flow. You are in the flow. Please, please complete. Please complete.
No, and that's why I think that, I think in North India, Sanatan is seen as the way of life. And it is not necessarily, at least in the everyday, seen as, I want to practice my caste. It possibly is a miscommunication,
Okay.
and it's a miscommunication that's helping the BJP. Because the more we go about the Sanatan, they can go and get votes in North India saying they're against your religion.
Okay.
And they.
Meena, I want to come back to the book. What sort of response you have received? The cover is different. The title is different. You have written it very differently. Chapters are different. Human subject research is, imagine this name of the chapter. White Western Imperial Feminism is again name of our chapter. The trophy video trap, the conveyor belt of gossip, anatomy of a digital assassination, the woman's body on a sugar high. I mean to say each chapter, each title, if I give it to a person, can constitute a different segment, So it's like a kaleidoscope sort of a novel, You can read it from middle. You can read the last chapter, go to the first chapter. Did you purposely think of putting it like this?
No, I think the fragmentary form came because I wanted to reflect the internet. Like, we don't stay on anything for too long. Our attention span is like, even 60-second reels, we watch only the first 20 seconds.
Okay.
So my reading was, how do you write for this?
So are you saying that this book reflects that sensibility, that net sensibility, that you can finish my chapter, and there are some chapters like karma and consequentialism. In the middle of all this, one line, second line, third line, fourth, 4.5 lines, and the chapter is over. Okay, Meena, before we close our conversation, how do you deal with online trolling? How have been your personal?
Oh no, I used to really dish it out and give it back. And I realized when I was younger, I had that kind of energy, and I definitely thought that I used to be a kind of Amy, like I used to love pissing them off and getting these responses. Now I have understood that it's not one person, it's really it's like toolkits go out, that people are told what to post, what has to be a hashtag. Once you realize it's a corporate structure, you know how to deal with this hate is possibly just ignore it. So
Okay.
maybe that's how I deal with it. Yeah.
So you have learned to ignore it properly.
I've learned my lesson. Yeah.
ठीक है चलिए anyway congratulations for writing this fabulous book. I hope you receive fabulous response also from both your readers and your larger people who follow you, and thank you for making time, Meena, for On Point. Thank you so much.
Thank you for making time for me. This is lovely. Thank you so much.
Thank you.